Hello there, friends, and welcome back to Sesh Cast. My name is Goldilocks. This is Sesh Cast, a cannabis podcast for cannabis sessions, and today I am back. Hello. Holy smokes, it's been 2 weeks. Technically, there were 2 weeks between the last two episodes as well, but that was accidental. So this is the first time back consciously after taking 2 weeks off, and it's kind of nuts. I have not recorded an episode in, I think, as long, the longest gap I've had between recordings since I started this podcast, I think. But I'll get into that in a second. Anyway, this is Sesh Cast, cannabis podcast, cannabis sessions. Covered that. My name is Goldilocks. Covered that too. This is a podcast I do where I get high and I talk about stuff. So thanks for stopping by and thanks for checking it out. If you have not checked it out before, welcome. If you are back from checking it out in the past, thanks for coming back. As always, you can keep up with me kind of on Instagram, which I am not on very often, but am on. You can find me at SeshCast, and you can also hit me up, email. I think my email is on my Instagram. Anyway, that's that. I'm struggling a little bit today. It's very early. Well, not very early, but very early to be this high. I have not been this high this early in a while. Today I'm smoking on Earth OG, and I'm just using my little Grav Labs one hitter today, because I thought it fit with the theme of the episode. Also, it's the only thing I have out right now because I had to clean everything else, and start to pack it up. And I will get to that in a second as well. But Earth OG out of this little Grav Labs one hitter. Yeah, that's covered. Man, it's been so long. How do I do an intro? I have a link in the show notes of this podcast. If you are interested in supporting the show in any way, I am an affiliate with the Lift Innovations grinder. And if you are interested in purchasing a grinder for any reason, you need a new one or you want to give a gift for somebody or, what have you, I would definitely recommend the Lift Innovations grinder. I love this thing. It's my favorite. And if I get people to buy it, I get a little help doing the podcast, which is super helpful for me. So if you'd like to support the show, feel free to check out that link. If not, no worries. I just appreciate you being here, you downloading it and sticking around. Man, I think that's it. Like, I should get on with talking about some other stuff. I'm going to hit this real quick, and then I'm going to jump in, and maybe I'll remember how to do this podcast. Yeah, be right back. Cheers. So I turned my mic up during that break because I was getting no reception on myself whatsoever. Now I feel like it's going to be really loud. I feel like it's really loud in my headphones. I don't know, maybe I need to turn my headphones down. I'm just struggling today. Let me tell you, friends. So let me kind of address the elephant in the room, I suppose, or maybe why I'm struggling so much. So last episode, I announced that I was going to be dropping this show down to every other week. And that has been a great decision for me, something that's been very, very helpful and has let me relax a little bit. So this is the first episode that I am back and that I recorded after taking some serious time off from the show. And I got to think a lot about where I'm at with this podcast and how I feel about this show and all of that. And the reality is I realized how burnt out I really was, and just how much motivation I had lost for this podcast over the last 6 or so months. And I thought that this episode would be a good episode to come back on because one of the things I really learned is that I need to do even my hobbies in moderation, all things in moderation. And that saying is something that's really important for me and it's really helpful for me. I should plug my laptop in. That'd be helpful. Um, Speaking of things that are helpful for me, come back. All right. Excuse me. So moderation. All things in moderation is a mantra that I think I repeat to myself pretty often because it is not uncommon for me to really throw myself at a thing and become like absolutely all consumed by a thing. And when I end up doing that with everything I'm doing, I get really burnt out and I slack on things. And this podcast was what became, I think, the tipping point and what became the thing that got the least amount of effort. Um, Sorry, I had to set my phone on the table. Um, it was really a bummer for me to realize that, and I think I had known that for a couple of weeks, really a couple of months, and it was bumming me out for sure. And I was trying to figure out, how can I bring back my passion for this podcast, which I started solely as a passion project. This was never a thing to like, oh, this is what I'm going to make my life's living doing or anything. Like, this was just something I wanted to do and something that I really enjoyed doing. And it really hit me to realize that I'd gotten burnt out on something I started for fun. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about how I could combat that burnout. And that was one of the many things that led me to drop into this every other week format. And what I realized was that while smoking weed is one of my favorite things and something that I do a lot, it's something that I still need to do in moderation. And it's something that I often trick myself into thinking I'm doing in moderation, even when that's not the truth. So I do not smoke weed all day, every day. I don't think that it's a great way to live. Some people can do it. I'm not one of those people. If you can smoke weed all day, every day and still be productive, you know what? More power to you. And I shouldn't say it's not a healthy way to live because if it works for you, it works for you. But I don't think that it works for most people. And I am one of those people. I struggle to get things done when I'm high all day long. And this podcast hit a point where I wasn't able to carve the time out of my schedule to record this podcast that I was when I started this show. And so as time went on, it really just pushed me back and pushed me back. And the way my schedule shifted, it shoehorned me into recording this podcast first thing on Monday morning. And so I started my week off high out of my freaking mind every single week. And Monday is typically like, sorry, I'm shifting in my very squeaky chair. Monday is my day of the week that I don't work until late in the evening. And so it's my one day to really get all of my things done, all my ducks in a row, everything in order. Bills paid and errands run and laundry done and all of that is Monday for me. It's the day of my week that I have to do all that. And so by doing this podcast every Monday morning, it was getting to the point where I would get super, super, super high and then still had this huge list of things to do. And it was just way, way, way too much for me to ever accomplish. It wasn't because I wasn't trying, because I was out there trying to do things, but I just had no energy and no motivation because I was freaking stoned. And you can hit me with that indica sativa argument and that I smoke predominantly indicas or whatever. It's not the argument I'm trying to have here. What I'm trying to say is I personally struggle to be super productive when I'm high. I can be really creative when I'm high. I'm very, very mellow. It helps with a ton of my anxiety. It really helps with my depression. That's why I smoke weed. But it does not help my productivity. And productivity is what I've needed these last couple months. And so by starting every single week off slow, I'm going to tilt my mic again. I'm really I feel like my levels are super low. And so I'm trying to get them back to where they were. But it's also just a bad room to record a podcast in. I lost my train of thought a little bit messing with my microphone. Oh, dang it. By starting every week off super, super high and not being productive out of the gate, it really kind of set up the pace the rest of my week was going to go. And so I began feeling more and more and more and more overwhelmed. And after some self-reflection and a lot of thought, I traced it back to this podcast. And it wasn't the podcast itself, it was just the act of recording every Monday morning at whenever I got out of bed. And if I could do it right and get up super, super early, then I was able to like smoke and record and then go back to bed. And those were the good days. But those good days became few and far between. And often I don't get off work until work Sunday night until late. And that made getting up at 5:30 in the morning on Mondays really hard. Um, so often it was, I'm not even sitting down to start smoking until 11 a.m. And I'm not done recording until 1 in the afternoon. And then even if I have 5 hours left before I need to go to work, or 6 hours left before I need to go to work, or even 7 hours left if I need to go to work, the first 2 hours of that, I'm a zombie hunting for food and just feeling stoned. So I really needed last week to show me what a Monday sober could really be. And it helped me a lot. I always think it's good to take a little tea break, even if it's 24 hours and even if it's 12 hours, whatever. Just have a day where you smoke a little less than you usually do and bring yourself back. It's very helpful. So that leads me to this week, because it is currently 10:15 on Monday morning, and here I am recording an episode of Sesh Cast. Damn it. And honestly, it's okay. The reality is that I had 2 other times this weekend that I was sitting down to record an episode and something else came up, and it was just not a possibility. And it's okay. I don't have a ton to do today, and I reworked the rest of my weekend so that recording this podcast would be okay. And I went to bed early last night, and yada, yada, yada. It's going to be all right. But one of the things that I really reaffirmed with myself is how important moderation is, and how important it is to not spend all your time stoned or drunk or enthralled with whatever your vice is. Take those breaks, do all things in moderation. Hobbies, exercise, work, all things, everything. Moderation is key, friends. I'm going to take another hit of this because I think I'm going to do shorter episodes, like a little bit. And so that means I should probably smoke more this week. So I'm gonna take a hit, and I'll be back. I hope your day is great. I hope everything is going well for you, and I hope you can smoke well. Cheers. So I think often we, in our society, and I'm again speaking specifically of American society because that's my experience, but we here in America like to treat everything as an all or nothing venture. You either do it or you don't, and it's that way with things like podcasts and other hobbies. It's that way with athletics and working out or playing sports. It's that way with doing drugs or drinking alcohol. It's that way with eating healthy or not eating healthy. It's that way with everything. You either do it or you don't. There's no consideration given to how often you do it, how much you do it, how detrimental or how positive that thing is for you. It's just you do it or you don't. And I'm getting a ton of feedback in my headphones. Is that from my phone? Probably. Let me move my phone to a better place. Gosh, this is a disaster of a podcast. That's okay. So I feel like there's not a lot of consideration given to, how the things we do affect our lives. It's just whether or not we do them. And I think that's what strays people away from moderation, because like I'm going to talk about weed as an example. So, you meet someone, they ask, do you smoke? Do you consume? Where are you at? And you say, yeah, I smoke weed. And all of a sudden you're a stoner. Doesn't matter how much you smoke. It doesn't matter how often you smoke. You smoke, you're a pothead. And the reality is that that's not true for everybody. Uh, you can smoke weed here and there on the weekends and not be a typical stoner. You can smoke weed every minute of every day and not be a typical stoner. And the same goes vice versa for both of those things. Like, you have the ability to define your own cannabis consumption in a way that is positive for you. And that, I think, is important to acknowledge when we have these discussions with people about how much do you smoke, do you smoke? Because I think it's really easy, even for us as other potheads, to cast judgment on others based on how much we smoke. If I meet somebody and they smoke, yeah, or they say like, well, yeah, I smoke all the time. So, well, how much do you smoke? Do you smoke more than me? Do you smoke less than me? Do we smoke about the same? Are we the same kind of pothead? Are we not? Um, and that's not the way that we should treat this drug. It's not a competition. It's not like it's not a race to the finish line. It's just something that we enjoy doing, and we should just enjoy doing it. And that's weed is the example I'm using, but I think that's true for everything. That's true for like physical fitness and working out. I was having this thought. I work at a climbing gym, and I was talking to some people I climb with, and we were having this discussion about whether or not you're a real climber if you only come to the gym once a week. And my answer was, of course, because it shouldn't matter how often you do something. If you're doing something a healthy amount for you, then that's a good positive thing. Whatever. I learned in these last 2 weeks of not smoke. Well, I mean, I've been smoking these last 2 weeks, but of not recording this podcast, that a couple things I need to take into moderation, or a couple things I need to do in moderation, are one, smoking. I was getting high in the morning, and that's never great for me. I'm a night smoker. But two, my own hobbies, and podcasting being one of them. This is not the only podcast that I work on. I work on like 3 or 4 other shows, as co-host, as editor, as producer, as a whole bunch of other things. And it's part of my career at the radio station, and I was getting just as burnt out on podcasting as I was of getting high at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m. And it makes it easy to get burnt out if you don't do things in moderation. That's like moderation, I think, is the number one combatant of burnout. If you're really feeling like you're overwhelmed, if you're down in the dumps, take a step back, and don't just take a step back and catch a breath before you hop right back in. I think that that's something that plagues a lot of content creators like myself. You think, oh, well, I'll be back, it'll be fine, like, I'm just going to take a couple weeks, clear my head, clear the burnout, and then I'm going to come back swinging, jump right back in like it's always been. And the reality is, if you're feeling burnout on the schedule that you're doing, it's because something needs to change. You can't just jump back in guns a-blazing thinking that it's not going to happen again, because it will. Then you're just putting a band-aid on a wound as opposed to trying to heal it, and that's where I was with this podcast, which is why I dropped it down to twice a week, because I knew, hey, I dropped this down to twice a week, and I have the opportunity for the passion of this to come back, and for this not to feel such a cloud hanging over my head and such a chore, because that's what it became, and that's not what I wanted it to be. And that's what burnout does. It takes your hobbies and turns them into chores. So I was like, something here needs to change. My role in this needs to change. My calendar with this needs to change. And I'm already feeling better about something that I was burnt out on by taking things in moderation. And, it really makes you assess not only the past, but the future, and how you want your trajectory to go after that. And that's with all things. That's with anything you are over consuming or overdoing, and you get burnt out on, and you take it back to moderation. It really gives you an opportunity to assess the way you want to continue forward. Gives you an opportunity to, like, really ponder and consider what got you to the place that you are, and how can you avoid getting there again. And that's kind of where I'm at. It's been this week for me of figuring out what is the moderation that I need for this podcast. My laptop turned off. I'm gonna take another hit. I'm moving all around the microphone, so I'm sure it sounds like garbage. Here we go. Cheers, friends. Oh boy. All right. So where I'm at with this podcast, and where I often find myself when I get burnt out on something, is this really tricky time where you have to walk this very thin line between what's the moderation level where I can keep my passion for this and keep the enjoyment in doing this, and what's the level where I'm going too far and I'm going to fall right back into the same burnout I already did, and what's the level where I'm going to fall off and I'm going to stop doing this. I'm in that middle line phase where I'm walking down the line trying to assess all situations and say, this is where I want to sit with this podcast. So the reality is that anytime you drop something back into moderation, you walk that line. And you've got to decide where the healthy place is for you to go. I talk to a lot of people who have fought addictions in their lives. And I'm myself included am someone who has fought with different addictions over the years. And when you cut back on whatever your vice is that you're addicted to, you walk that line again where you have to ask yourself, is there a healthy place for me in this? Do I need to go to the place where I'm just not going to do it again? Is there a healthy moderation? Where's the line that I'm going too far? You got to put all of those things on the table and really consider all of those. And I think that a lot of people stumble in this phase, and I'm not sure that everyone acknowledges how difficult this phase is. So whether you are giving up an addiction, whether you are taking a step back from something because it has become a burden for you, because it has become unhealthy for you, for whatever reason, if you're in this position like I am, and you're about to take that step to cut something back to a more moderate pace, don't be scared by this time, and don't let yourself get discouraged while you waver on and off that central line of where you need to be, because it's very, very difficult. And people don't give enough credit to this sort of like bounce back, aftershock area, whatever you want to call it. It's this time where maybe you go one way, maybe you go the other way, but you're trying to redefine your relationship with whatever part of your life you have changed. And it's difficult. It really is. And this is the most common time for people to relapse. This is the most common time for people to give up on hobbies. This is it. This is the phase of, I don't know what I want to be. I don't know where I want to go with this. And I'm really still assessing that with Sesh Cast itself. I have had an amazing experience over the last year, and I don't know that I want to just let this show go, but at the same time, I know that right now my heart isn't here and my heart isn't in it. And it's hard, it's a hard decision to make, and that's why it's one that I'm trying not to let brashness make the decision. I'm just trying to walk this line for a little while, drop it to every 2 weeks, recreate this calendar for myself, find a new moderation, and see where I want to go from there, and make a healthy and informed decision because I snap to decisions way too quickly. So I think that that's a healthy thing for everyone to do. I think anytime you make a major life change, you got to test the waters with it for a little while. And just because the change you made isn't 100% the answer, it's a step in the right direction always. Um, and that's an important reminder for people to have. I moved my clock to a place where I can't see it. So yeah, I think that, um, I think that I lost my train of thought. Damn. I feel like I was going to go somewhere good with that. I think that I'm going to take one more hit before the final hit, and then maybe bounce into sort of an outro type thing. Yeah, I'll be right back. Cheers. So I said I had to pack my glass up. I might as well go back to that. I am in the process of moving, and it's early steps, early phases. But I've been in one house for 3 years, so I've accumulated a lot of things here. And the earlier I can start sort of packing slowly, the better. And my glass is likely going to be one of the first things to move because I want it to move safely. So I was having some people come through the house, and the landlord here is gonna, I think, sell the house after my friends and I leave. So he is getting it inspected and appraised and all that. And so I've had a lot of people through the house and through my room. So I've wanted to keep my glass like protected and put away where I know it's not going to get bumped or knocked over. I have my smoking glass in a glass shelf, not just like a shelf for my glass. It is a cabinet made of glass. So I didn't want anything to get bumped into and broken. So things are packed up, and will probably stay packed up here for a little while. Might take something out because this one hitter is not just going to get me through for the next couple of months. But I'm in the process of moving, in the process of trying to reassess my whole life, not just this podcast. I've gotten to a point where I'm also burnt out on what I'm doing work-wise, life-wise, what's the word I'm looking for? Social life-wise, like all of those things. And so I'm just trying to reassess things and sort of pull my life together a little bit. So I'm moving, I'm working on getting a different working situation set up. And I think after all of that will be a great time for me to sit down and really assess where I'm at with this podcast. And maybe it keeps going and maybe it doesn't. But the one thing that matters is that the last 58 episodes all exist, and they've all been fun, and I'm happy they're all out there, and they will stay on the internet in perpetuity, and maybe somebody will discover it and fall in love with it one day. And I'm going to keep going. There's going to be at least, I don't know, like a bunch more episodes until I move and decide what I want to do then. But as always, I want to round it out and say thanks for the support. Thanks for keeping me going, and thank you for your encouraging and your kind words. And yeah, it's always great. I love it. It's why I've kept on doing this for over a year. It's been your kind words and your encouragement that have been so great for me. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for continuing that support through this episode and through whatever comes next. Sesh Cast isn't the podcast. Sesh Cast is all of us. It is in you. That's my dumb, cliche, cheesy way to end an episode. So thanks. Check me out on Instagram. I'm at Sesh Cast. Shoot me an email if you want to say hello. And yeah, that's that. I'll see you in a couple weeks. Have a good couple weeks. Thanks. Cheers. My name is Goldilocks. This has been Sesh Cast. Thank you so much for listening.